All right, we're at 11 o'clock, so we can get started here. Thanks everyone for joining. Today we are talking about LastPass password management. So password is one of the most frustrating things that users can deal with their technology, and also one of the greatest risks that they can be to an organization. Um, so you're here with me, Brian. I'm CTO, Senior Consultant here at i3 Business Solutions. And Ragav, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Brian, hi, nice to meet you. Or rather, nice to meet everyone else, I should say. So, yeah, my name is Ragav Khosla. As you can see there, I am a team lead and a staff solutions consultant here at the partner team, working with MSPs similar to Brian's organization to educate you, the end user, about why you should consider using LastPass in your business. Thanks, Brian.
All right, a little bit about i3. If you're not familiar with us, we are a managed service provider here in Michigan, focusing on small to medium businesses. i3 has been improving companies' technology for 25 years here in the West Michigan area. We focus on traditional technology services, networking, IT consulting, a lot of Office 365, cloud services. Most recently, the last few years, a big focus on security management and helping companies navigate the security landscape. A couple questions for some people to think about as we go through this today. How confident do you feel that the tools you're using are actually protecting your organization? I would say, in the olden days, let's call it pre-ransomware, people were pretty confident that they had the tools in place. I would say today, with all of the cyber attacks occurring, people are feeling in general less confident that they have the tools they need. Now, this is a fun one. How many passwords does the average person have? And I took a look at my own password vault in LastPass, and I got to tell you, the number was staggering. I had no idea how many passwords that I had that were being managed for me in the system. So yeah, 90% of people indicated they have up to 50 online accounts with passwords. I'll tell you, mine was well into the hundreds. I think I was over 300. Yeah, one of the biggest risks, reusing passwords, right? Using common passwords, weak passwords. Nobody's going to be able to remember all those passwords. So the risk to a lot of organizations is their employees are reusing passwords. And I can tell you firsthand, I've seen this consulting with organizations. One of the services that we use is a dark web monitoring service, and we've come across clients, business owners that were using the same password across all of their systems, and those passwords were available on the dark web, creating a huge risk to the organization. Weak passwords, with all the security tools in the world, a weak password is still the weak link to your network. So a lot of breaches, the most recent one being Uber and MFA fatigue breach. So somebody had a compromised password. System was protected with MFA, but through MFA fatigue, they kept, hitting the user with an MFA prompt. Eventually, the user hit approve, let the bad guys in. So even with all the security tools in place, your users and their passwords can still be a weak link. So, we've tried to address this in the past with password complexity, password length. Everybody knows, the crazy passwords that you're trying to remember. And when you're doing that across hundreds of systems, it's just not realistic. So, Ragav, why don't you tell us a little bit about how LastPass is part of the solution to this problem?
You got it, Brian, absolutely. So I think when you take a step back here, what you're considering here is clearly based upon the information that you already shared, right? We've got a ton of reused passwords, 300 passwords or so that you referenced, right? As an average user here. So we're going to run the spectrum, right? You're going to have individuals that basically have tons and tons of passwords. And if they're already using duplicate, weak, or missing passwords associated to those websites, which might well be business assets to you as the business owner, that in of itself inherently introduces risk. So the way that LastPass functions is, in essence, we replace every single one of those 300 passwords, using your example there, Brian, with unique complex passwords that are randomly generated. And they are all held and protected behind the LastPass encrypted vault. And so what's interesting about that is the simple way that you access your vault is using a combination of your email address, which might be your business email address or another email address that you have, and this concept of a master password or a master passphrase. Inherently, what we try to recommend here is that it's a combination of characters or words or whatever that are specific to you. Only you know what that particular master password or master passphrase happens to be. No one outside of you knows that. And when you couple that, in essence, with accessing, or rather leveraging, MFA, you're building a secure environment for you to actually access the content of your vault. So again, Brian, using you as the example, with 300 passwords per se, now you're effectively removing all of those passwords by using LastPass created passwords, and you only ever need to remember one. So whilst definitely passwords are part of the problem, here we are collapsing 300 into one, which is where the solution comes into play. Now, that being said, when you take a look at this particular slide and the content behind it, okay, as the business owner, here's the predicament that you face yourself in. You've got obviously security constraints around your business assets, but then you also have the user experience, your employees. How well and how easily are they going to be able to adopt a solution that they may or may not have any familiarity with or about? So what's interesting about that, okay, is if we start on the left-hand side here, where it talks about needing to secure the company accounts and data. In my mind, those are your business assets. Those are your crown jewels. You quite literally want to be able to retain that information, make sure that there is no ability to actually export any of that content out, have it made available to anyone on the dark web or anything like that, because clearly there are risks associated to that. You may also be contending with things like cyber insurance renewals, and perhaps you're thinking about password management, and where does that fit into that? Or where does MFA fit into that? These are all sort of like the requirements or considerations on the left-hand side of this actual seesaw that we're looking at. On the right-hand side, it really focuses in on adoption and the end user experience. So quite literally here, what you're thinking about is, as a LastPass user, an employee, one of your employees in your organization, are they accessing something on an iPhone, on an Android device, perhaps on a MacBook or a laptop, or perhaps on a tablet? So from this perspective, how easy is that? If you think about it day to day, right, with the use of obviously facial recognition and biometrics and things like that, as consumers, as users, we are now so accustomed to being able to access something via facial recognition. So as a consumer, if I go into a coffee shop, for example, Pete's Coffee, and I want to pay for a specific something, using my app on my phone, I'm using facial recognition to gain access into my phone. Maybe the app in of itself also has facial recognition. So as users, when we're thinking about security, we want that simplicity. And the key question is, how do you find that right balance between ensuring the security of your business assets and the usability day to day? Hopefully that makes sense with everybody. But Brian, would you mind moving to the next slide, please?
Yeah, and balance is definitely the challenge. I mean, you can put the best security in place, but if it's not easy for end users to use to get their job done, they're not going to use it and it's not going to work.
100% agree with you. So if you will, think about this particular representation and work from the left-hand side through the middle to the right. So we'll start with this on the left-hand side, right? We already talked, or I mentioned about the user experience. I mentioned the fact that it needs to be easy, it needs to be intuitive, but it also needs to be seamless. So from this perspective, okay, when you as the business owner, you want that onboarding experience, that activation to quite literally be very, very simplistic. But the minute that the account has actually been activated, okay, Straight away, you want to think about your employees actually leveraging LastPass to, as it states there, create, store, and share passwords. What we saw over COVID, right, was individuals working from home with multiple other individuals, perhaps, and the complex or the very simple question, rather, of how do I share a password? Am I going to write it down on a post-it note? Am I going to text it to somebody? And it might well be for, the Wi-Fi network or a streaming service, or perhaps it's a business-related application. So those are the use cases in and around that. But now the last aspect here is about automatically saving and filling. Think about it from this perspective. How, as a user, do you want to actually retain information in wherever you're actually accessing it? Is it a laptop, MacBook, smartphone, etc.? You want to be able to have that be a very, very simplistic process. Now, working from left to right, let's introduce the password manager aspect. In the previous slide, I already started talking about some of the constraints or considerations in and around security from a business perspective. But right here, what you're looking at, okay, really introduces the requirements in and around the actual policies, the controls across the business. So to me, from your perspectives as the business owner, you have some options open to you. Perhaps you start considering some of the policies that LastPass has based upon individual or business use cases. For example, you could implement certain policies that allow certain users or groups in your business, maybe sales and marketing, to access certain shared credentials, certain shared folders. You have the ability to maybe think about implementing some policies to restrict location, geofencing, perhaps time and day. All of these controls and these policies can be implemented across your office environment, irrespective of whether users are working around the country, perhaps in a hybrid capacity, or obviously working from the office. Now to the far right there, and talking about the security and the encryption. When you step back and you think about it, okay, I mentioned earlier about how passwords are part of the problem, but also that it's part of the solution. So when you access a LastPass vault, okay, you are accessing, as it states, a digital vault. But what does that really mean? So if you think about it, okay, using a combination of your email address coupled with that master password or passphrase, and additionally in conjunction using MFA, you are gaining access to a digital vault. This vault in of itself has basically AES 256 military grade encryption associated to it. The degrees of the salting and the hashing that goes on within the LastPass architecture always ensures that the user data, your data, is only ever viewable by you as the individual that created your particular vault. That way you can feel very, very rest assured. But now, as I just mentioned in the previous instance about the password manager there, I talked about different rules and different policies. So you have the ability to be able to state that. Perhaps you have an employee that is based, I don't know, maybe in Boston or in San Francisco or New York, and you want to set constraints around how that individual accesses their vault and therefore their business assets. All of that is part of the LastPass solution. And again, when you think about it, okay, these are the considerations that you may well be considering as you implement LastPass within your environment. Brian, do you have anything else to add there, please?
Yeah, no, it's a great feature to have in the product on the network infrastructure side. One of the things that we've been doing recently is locking down client firewalls to only a geographic area or IP address to be able to access resources. Right. The thing that we never want to have is something that's available from anywhere that allows someone from the other side of the world to be kind of knocking on the door trying to break into something.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those of you that have never actually seen LastPass before, this is graphically what it looks like. Let's have a discussion about the two items that are in the center of the screen here. On the left-hand side, what you can, or rather in the center of the screen, what you see here is a smartphone. It could well be your iPhone, it could be an Android, and it's populated with lots and lots of sites. Sites in this particular instance, as you can see, might well be Google, Salesforce, Netflix, or Twitter. So each one of these particular sites here has a unique username, but more importantly, has a unique password. That password, again, is randomly generated via LastPass, right? And in addition to that, you have the ability to specify, do I want to go up to something like, say, 99 characters without ever having to think about actually creating that password? So now, as a user of LastPass, think about it. You're accessing your phone. You're accessing a website that you're using for business purposes. You have an email address already. It could be, John Smith at, I don't know, abc.com. And as a result of that, okay, that's your email address. But now you want to create a password associated to Workday or Salesforce or something like that. How might you currently do that? LastPass removes that complexity behind it by creating that secure password and applying it to that particular website. But what's interesting about that, okay, is say I lose my phone for whatever reason, right? Now, if I've lost my phone, one might argue, well, gosh, I've lost all access to content held on this particular device. Typically, when you think about, using, like, say, Chrome Password Manager or Keychain or something like that, you realize that it's not a cloud-based solution. It's not device, browser, or OS agnostic, as LastPass is device, browser, and OS agnostic. If I lose my iPhone, I know, using the screen on the right-hand side there, then I can access my vault on a MacBook, on a laptop, on a Windows device. Doesn't really matter. Because of that cloud-based architecture, everything that I've held in my vault is accessible from any kind of particular device. When you couple that with, though, those policies that we were just discussing in the previous slide, know that you're not just using the password aspects of LastPass from a security perspective, but you've got those policies and constraints around, again, who accesses what, when, and perhaps why. Brian, do you have anything else to add there, please?
I just love the mobility of the passwords, and sometimes if you haven't been using it very long, it's unexpected when you're used to going to a site, let's say on your desktop, and then you're like, oh, I need to access that on my mobile when we're out and about, and LastPass is there to log in and fill that in for you. It's just a great feature of mobility.
So now, just to reiterate some key value points of LastPass here. So as you can see here, just running down from the middle there, we are extremely secure with our zero knowledge model, just to re-emphasize that. But the convenience, okay, perhaps in your business, you've got using Chrome, or perhaps you're using Microsoft Edge or Firefox, or perhaps you're using Safari. Knowing that all of those different browser types that LastPass can, function in those particular instances obviously provides you with peace of mind. But in addition to that, okay, thinking about it from a compliance perspective, either maybe you've had an audit or you're in the process of getting an audit, right? Maybe it's for cyber insurance related needs, again, as it states there. From this perspective, knowing that LastPass's policies can be provisioned and configured and assigned to individual users, groups, or entire company gives you the ability to know that, okay, I've got a certain use case and I can use LastPass to address the issues in and around that certain use case. The last bullet point there about being scalable. I often think of LastPass as kind of like, like this pay as you grow type of scenario, right? Whereby, like you might have across your business 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 employees. And perhaps you identify a target group of employees that you actually want to start using with LastPass, right? So from this perspective, LastPass can quite literally be targeted towards a pilot group as you get used to using the capabilities, but then seamlessly just allow it to be scaled across the entire organization. In addition to that, we don't just provide a password management related solution. If something like single sign-on is within the realms of your day-to-day business function, LastPass as an identity and access management solution gives you the ability to use single sign-on. So perhaps today you're using Office 365 as an example, with Azure. In this particular instance, recognize that maybe you've got some other applications that are outside of Office 365. Knowing that they can be provisioned and assigned to different users and groups through LastPass, it could actually help your business keep running, right, with these essential applications. Lastly, the MFA aspect. The question that I have for everyone on the call today is this: what is your appetite for MFA? And by that, what I mean is, do you actually want to just protect your access to the vault, which we already do? Or maybe, again, from a cyber insurance perspective, do you have a business need to actually protect the device? Maybe if a user is protecting an application held in their vault, perhaps it's Salesforce, or perhaps you have someone frequently accessing a connection to your corporate headquarters via a VPN. We all know never to actually go to an airport, for example, and get on the public Wi-Fi, because obviously it's not secure. So these are the kind of instances where you can think about using LastPass's MFA capabilities to address challenges within the business. Brian, do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I would just say that, where we've introduced MFA to clients, either through our recommendations or compliance, some companies are, they're nervous about implementing it, about the user impact. But then, once they get it in there, they realize this is not intrusive, and I didn't know how easy it would be, and it feels good to be doing the right thing. All right. And so what we're going to talk a little bit now is about LastPass Enterprise with i3 Business Solutions. So i3 has partnered with LastPass to provide LastPass Enterprise as a solution for small businesses. So what we do is we use our experience with technology management and integration to help tie LastPass into your small business. And that includes installation and setup of the product, best practices, how we see it used, what the use cases are in your business, because it's not just a password for a website. It could be for other areas of your business where you have shared security needs. End user training, questions and answer, usage reporting. That's a great feature, Ragav, that we might get into later. But you can actually see who's utilizing the password manager, get some information about the security of their passwords, if they're reusing passwords, those types of things. Great added bonus is with every user that's licensed with LastPass Enterprise, you get a family pass for LastPass Premium for up to 6 individual accounts. So for every user that you license with LastPass, that user's family, up to 6 people, will have access to LastPass Premium. That's a great feature because you can not only utilize, good password hygiene, but you can teach good password practices in the family as well. All right, Ragav, why don't you show us a little bit about how this works?
Sure. So in essence, what you're looking at right now, okay, we're going to look at a series of slides here that walks through what the end user experience might look like day one after, basically i3 solutions have obviously provided, the extension, access to the extension and LastPass for all of your employees. So your first port of call, quite honestly, after activation has been performed, is having your employees actually run an import of their source passwords. Why are we suggesting that? Well, the data, as mentioned earlier, suggests that users have a spreadsheet. Users have Chrome Password Manager, for example, or perhaps a user might already be leveraging LastPass or other similar solution to actually retain passwords. So from this perspective, okay, we're giving the end user over here the ability to take that import of that source file and ultimately populate it into a user vault. Brian, would you mind moving to the next slide, please? So this is what a vault looks like, similar to what we saw earlier, but this actually is an instance of my vault after actually running an import. So now what we're actually reviewing, okay, is as an end user, when I gain access into my vault, as you can see here, I've actually been able to categorize different site objects, right, different applications within different folders. So now I've got a very structured, well laid out vault that allows me to access all of the business assets associated to the contents in my vault. Now, in addition to that, okay, Brian introduced this concept of a family pass. It's actually referred to as families as a benefit. And what that really means is, okay, is you as a user or as a potential user of LastPass, you have the ability to, when you gain access into your vault, like what you're looking at right now, you will be able to actually see 2 different vantage points of your vault. You'll see the business side of your vault, and then you'll see the family side of the vault, the personal side. And that in of itself might introduce questions in and around, well, can I think about administering controls and policies on, user behavior and visibility? And those are discussions that we can have after the fact, but be rest assured in knowing that policies and controls definitely do exist with respect to implementing and applying it across not only just the business side of the vault, but also the families as a benefit side of the vault too. Brian, next slide, please. So this is getting very interesting data point here. When you think about it, okay, I always think about a return on investment. You as the business owner, what is the value to you and your employees with respect to capabilities in LastPass? So from this particular vantage point, what you are looking at, okay, is not the fact that dark web monitoring is provided per individual, right, with all the email addresses associated to this vault, right? That's a given. But in addition to that, okay, when I draw your attention to the top of the screen and specifically what's highlighted in red, what that is actually highlighting are passwords that are either duplicate passwords, weak passwords, or missing passwords. So stop to consider. Anyone that's actually viewing this call, ask yourself today in your own personal or professional life, how many passwords do you currently have that actually has either weak passwords, perhaps they're missing, or perhaps they're actually duplicated? Now sit and think about what's the actual ramifications associated to having those kinds of passwords. You as the business owner, you recognize the risk associated to that. Here's where it gets interesting, because after we provide that visibility to the end user, Brian, move to the next slide, please. We also provide that visibility to you as the business owner. This is a representation of admin console that is available to you as the business owner if you have IT admin or if you're leveraging Brian's organization to perform these functions, but specifically in and around reports, as highlighted in red. Those particular reports there will report back to you on any employees in your organization that has those previously mentioned duplicated, weak, or missing passwords. So when you think about it, okay, in terms of implementing LastPass to address security concerns in and around your environment, here's what I'd like you to consider. 4 steps. Step 1, after activation, run an import wizard. Why? Employees statistically have a source of passwords. Step 2, have them actually review, right? Look at the vault, get a sense of it, okay? What they've actually got populated in their vault. Step 3, you're talking about having the employees access their security dashboard. Why? You kind of consciously want them to get a sense of, well, what's the impact of having all of these passwords that are highlighted as either duplicate, weak, or missing. Step 4, and most importantly to you as the business owner, reflecting back on what's highlighted here in red, you're identifying which employees in your organization are inducing risk. This is all about risk mitigation. Clearly, we want to have as little or none, basically, impacted users, right, in the middle column there. And clearly, as a result of that, you're not going to have any percentage of users being impacted. You literally want zeros in those columns. And at the end of the day, using these 4 particular steps will provide you with an environment as the business owner of having secure, complex passwords within your business to protect your business assets. Brian, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ragav. Yeah, I mean, one of the one of the interesting things about rolling this out is when you do that password import process, and people get to see how poor their existing password hygiene was, how many reused passwords they had, how many leaked passwords they had, how many passwords that were just plain the word password. So it is usually eye-opening when we run through that process and tighten an organization. All right, so we are gonna wrap this up here. Take any questions if we have them. So mandates that we have to do Consider the password risk that you have in your organization and how that leaves the organization vulnerable, what those weak points of entry are, how your users can potentially leave the risk door open, and how a password manager, how LastPass can improve the user experience, productivity, and improve security at the same time. One question, Ragav,
Yeah.
what's wrong with using my browser's password manager? I know I have an answer to that.
Yeah, it's really quite straightforward actually. There's no policy or controls around using your browser password managers. And in addition to that, if you think about you lose your laptop where that browser is holding all that information, as an organization, you want to know that can I still access those passwords? Well, using our cloud-based model, whether I'm using from a smartphone or another device or anything like that, I'll always have access to the content of my vault. So to me, it's about policy controls. And secondly, it's about providing access all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that we educate our clients on is that when users are storing their password in their browser, a lot of times they're logged in with their personal account, right? Let's say their personal Gmail account, that's where all those potentially business passwords are living, and you have no control over those passwords or the security of the account where they're stored in. So, yeah.
Yep,
All
100%.
right, very good. So some contact information there, get a hold of i3 and we can help get you started and talk about how this can help your business. Reach out, i3businesssolutions.com, or email us, salesrequests@i3bus.com. All right, thanks, Ragav.